Good evening, everybody. This is Charles Hoskinson, live from warm, sunny Colorado. It is Friday the 14th. It's a good day. A little bit better than Friday the 13th, I'd gather, although some people like that day. And it is August. Lovely, lovely August. And this is another one of those surprise AMAs. I love making them. You guys love watching them. They're a lot of fun, aren't they? Well, welcome, welcome, welcome. It's been a hell of a week. We shipped a lot of software. We've had some fights, some ups and downs. The centralization metric went from 1 to 0.9. And people actually started making blocks for the first time in the history of the Cardano project. I signed some new grants for various things like the Mune project to bring imperative Plutus to Plutus. And there's probably 500 other updates, but that's for another time. Blog posts are coming. Check the IOHK blog. A lot of code. I've actually got to dig into the Scala code again for the first time in a long time because of the recent debate in the ETC community, which I've also now included in the live AMAs. So if you're an ETC member, welcome. We do these quite often. It's a wonderful vehicle for people to ask any questions that they want, and nothing is off limits. You ask it, and everybody can see it. I choose to answer it or not. So that's the rule. I looked at the Mantis code base, just read through all that Scala code, and boy, there's a lot of it, and it's good stuff. And it's going to be fun to see that resurrected. But anyway, skipping the usual update, let us get to your questions. All right, let's see what you guys got. Anyone know when Yoroi iOS will be ready? Given their development cadence, I'd say probably about 2 to 4 weeks is my estimate. But I'm not a core developer of Yoroi. That's done by Emergo, so they have their own release schedule and timing and so forth. And I think that's the most difficult of all of the platforms they're deployed to. The browser is the easiest, Android, then iOS. So give Seba some time. He knows what he's doing, but boy, they could use an extra hand here and there. Although the products are quite high quality. Okay. Why is it so important for you to save ETC? If you have kids, you'd understand. It's the first major cryptocurrency I worked on. I left BitShares too early, and ETC is Ethereum. It's the original chain. I don't want to see the original chain die. I started that project with Vitalik and Gavin back in 2013. And, it's one thing for it to have its own leadership and direction and be doing its own thing. It's another thing to find it under a bridge, like with a heroin needle in the arm, slowly dying. It's like you got to save it. You got to be there. You got to help people out. And unfortunately, it's in a very bad spot right now. 51% attacks usually end up killing cryptocurrencies if you have too many of them, because they cause this cascading death spiral of confidence. And so basically, after the first one, exchanges get a little shaky. The second, the third, etc., they get really shaky. They start delisting. People stop mining. The price goes down. And if the price goes down, you have more 51% attacks because there's less hash rate. So then more people lose confidence, and you see that feedback loop. It ends up destroying the entire system. So this is a do or die situation for ETC. And I don't want to see it die because we put a lot of work into it. A lot of other people put work into it, and it's overall a good community. Cardano, the third pillar of a third generation cryptocurrency is interoperability. The whole point of Cardano is it's useful to everybody, not just people, but other ecosystems. For example, we proposed to Litecoin the concept of wrapped wrapped Litecoin, so that they could send Litecoin into Cardano and use it as a governance stack. The exact same thing can be done for Ethereum Classic, litany of other options as well. So it's in our best interest to build an internet of blockchains and get lots of different projects to work around. The rules of the game are that if we're going to go work on a different blockchain, it has to have a separate development team from the Cardano team. There's never going to be a case where I reach into that team and pull resources out of it and put it somewhere else. Those people work on Cardano only. And the ETC team has always been independent. They have their own product management, their own project management. They eat, sleep, and breathe ETC all day long. And they write different code. It's Scala. It's not Haskell. It's a totally different way of thinking about things. And they're just different developers. And they have their different timelines and different project management. They have the different software development methodology. They don't use quite formal methods there. we do on the Cardano side. It's still very good code, but it's just a completely different product line. So they're just living on separate sides of the world. But that team, that Mantis team, has always wanted to see that product come to fruition, and they never had a chance to do that, unfortunately. And so it'd be nice to see if we can make that happen. But, worst case scenario, our time there will be ephemeral and just help them get through that 51% attack, and hopefully they can get back on the right road to get to where they need to go. And perhaps they implement a treasury. And if they do, we'd love to build a beautiful roadmap to go and take some of those miners from Ethereum as they transition. Because guess what? They're not coming to Cardano or proof of stake coin. We don't need any of that bull hooey. But Ethereum Classic will always be a proof of work coin. And there's always going to be a market and a demographic that believes in that. And that demographic is never going to believe in proof of stake. It's a different religion. Okay. And that means you can have both tents comfortably, and they can be independent ecosystems and do their own thing, but they can trade with each other and they can work with each other for mutual benefit. And you always look at that. The other thing is that by playing in the Ethereum world, it gives us a great degree of knowledge and expertise with Solidity in the EVM, which is the primary competitive language to Cardano. It's almost like Apple developing applications on Windows. It gives them a real good sense of what Microsoft does and how they do it and what that experience is like. So when they go and build an Apple product, they can build it better and more competitive against a Microsoft product. Well, similarly, by working on the EVM and understanding all of its sins, it gives us a really deep understanding of where we need to be better and more competitive for Cardano. And this actually paid huge dividends. We're one of the few companies in the entire industry that's actually handwritten an EVM. There's only like 5 or 6 companies that have done that, handwritten it, not forked it, but actually wrote one from scratch. And you can validate that because we wrote it in Scala, and it's the only Scala implementation in the entire industry. So there was no one to copy for that language. So that's why we're there. And I hope it ends up all working out for everybody. It's always a risk with these things. You roll the dice, but I'm an entrepreneur. That's how that works. And at the end of the day, I feel responsible for all these things. And I'd like to have a good outcome for everybody. Okay. So let's see your next question. Any update from bids in Africa? Yeah, the digital vouchers program, we're probably going to work with Kafia on that. It looks like they won because they underbid us by a substantial amount. We're not exactly sure how they're going to service the contract with any degree of profit with what they bid, unless it's like 5 cents a farmer. We're not exactly sure how that works. We have some suspicions that perhaps a revision will occur somewhere in the negotiating process. But they did proactively reach out to us and ask us to partner with them. So we'll probably come in as a subcontractor. So it's going to be great to work with them and the ATA. And we have about 4 or 5 other projects that we're actively bidding on. It's a game of numbers, and we'll make announcements. Reuters did reach out to us and said, hey, keep us in the loop. And when you have something juicy, we'll write about it. So look for a Reuters article when we actually do have one of these things locked down. But it's a great environment to be in. There's certainly no slowdown in government projects there. Okay. All right. I like how people are asking Charles questions like he's actually going to read the comments. I do read the comments. I read yours, Farley. All right. Hi, Charles. Are you still in talks with Charlie Lee about working with Litecoin? Yes, we are, actually. We talked to Charlie and the other guy, Schwartz, at the Litecoin Foundation. And right now there's back and forth between our cross-chain team and Charlie's guys about exactly what NEPA POWs do and how they work. That's really the first step. And once they have a pretty good understanding of it, we're going to write a Litecoin improvement proposal. And then we're going to talk with them about what would be required to do a hard fork to bring that in. Maybe they can even get away with doing it with a soft fork and something. We even have a structure called a velvet fork that was invented specifically for Bitcoin, which may work. So there's a spectrum of implementation options there, but that'd be really cool. And our hope is to get that LIP written before the native asset standard comes out. And then when the native asset standard comes, we can start talking about wrapping of assets. The first wrapping that'll be done will likely be done with, likely be done with a stable coin for a variety of DeFi reasons. But yeah, we're working on it. What else we got here? Are you allowed to call me Charlie? You call me anything you want. Fat guy in a little coat. Me? Someone else? All right. I'm fearful if I ask a question here involving Cardano and ETC, I'll trigger an event. Okay. Guys are both welcome. It's all one big family. Surprise, Shelly is released. It is released. Been out for a while now, since July 29th. People making blocks. 1% pool was the first to make a block. We already have 100 stake pools, different stake pools that have made blocks this epoch. And every epoch, more and more will make it. And we're on the road to full decentralization. It's actually not a bad road. It's pretty. We've got flowers on the side, little koi pond, little bamboo. You'll like it. You should walk on it. It's very pretty. Doesn't have any snakes. When will Cardano be able to withdraw from Bittrex? So I got a report this morning that Bittrex has everything running, and I think they're in the final stages of QA. So I think that's going to happen very soon, but obviously that organization has to speak for itself. But they worked really hard, and we worked really hard with them. And it was a Herculean effort to get a lot done, because there was a very old wallet that had a lot of addresses in it, and it was following the old Sarakel stuff, and there was a ton of stuff that needed to be done to kind of unwind this ball of yarn that was very nasty and tangled. But they got through it, and I think we'll be in a really good position. Just they have to announce it, but everything's looking pretty green there. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's imminent, maybe next week, maybe this weekend. Who knows? Exchanges are exchanges, and they have their own internal QA structure. But we're, of course, available 24/7, including the weekend, for comments, because they're a Tier 1 exchange. Can you tell us about the new Shopify repository on GitHub? That surprised me, too. I'm going to find out more about it on Monday. I saw it on the Reddit, Rick. But that'd be really exciting if we could accept data through Shopify. Any projects you're worried about? Not really. We got a huge lead on a lot of people, so I'm not super worried. The 3 molten tar monsters have been very quiet since Shelly. Yet don't say. Yet don't say. They have been. Daedalus takes about 20 minutes to open on my Mac. You are not the only one. Me too. We are fixing a lot of that with 1.19. So next week, there's an update coming, and it should take 20 to like 3, maybe even 2. And there'll be future performance updates coming as well. So look for that. I'm sorry that we couldn't quite get all those performance improvements in the initial launch of Shelly, but you know, you have to cut somewhere when you do a release. And we thought it would be better to get everything feature complete and then do the performance improvements later on, because it doesn't impact the security. It's just a user experience issue. And now we're on the other side of it. So now we can worry about better user experience. So that'll get cleaned up in the next few updates. And there's a pretty big one coming next week that'll make it a lot faster. And I told the team, keep going. It's not good enough. You have to really make it awesome. So it's a big target, and we spend a non-trivial amount of time on that. And there's some great people who work on that team, like Tim Shears, for example, and Nick Clark and so forth. And they just do some amazing work there. What is Mantis? Mantis is a full node for Ethereum Classic. We built it. Any update on Ledger Nano X? My ADA is hostage with them now. No, it's not. You can use ADA Lite, and you can also use Yoroi, I believe. And very soon you'll be able to use Daedalus. So you have at least 1, perhaps 2 really good options to use Ledger with. Will Ledger Live have staking capabilities? I believe we will support Ledger Live, but that's a foundation issue, and there's some discussions about getting all that stuff where it needs to go. It takes a little bit of time. Christine Love, I know this may sound soppy, but I want to write a fan letter to you. Many people do, and when they send them to me, I actually read them out. Thoughts on YAM? That's why we use formal methods. I keep saying it. Keep saying it. Maybe one day people are going to listen. Charles, what happened in Cambodia with the RPG, the tank, and the 3 days of walking? That's a story. That's a very fun story. There's a few of them in my life. One in Mongolia, one in Cambodia. There's an Africa story too. I should be dead. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yoroi plus Trezor is good to go. Ledger is not yet available with Yoroi. Oh, okay. So you'll have to use Ada Lite. I remember that Trezor was working with Yoroi, but that's because Emergo uses Trezor, and so they are able to test that first. But yeah, Ledger is coming very shortly. Any interest in projects migrating using the ERC20 converter? We're going to start work on the ERC20 converter as soon as we finalize the native asset standard. And we're likely going to farm that out as a fixed cost contract with a reasonable time frame to build, 1 to 2 months for the prototype. And then when we have the native asset testnet running, then one of the KPIs will be their ability to parse the Ethereum blockchain and port all those tokens over. So when we're a little further along, we'll do a demo for you guys, probably in one of the product updates. And actually, what would be really cool is that we'll also showcase the multi-asset wallet for Daedalus. And then if you happen to hold one of those ERC20 tokens that gets copied over, you can actually restore your wallet in Daedalus and play around with those tokens that previously were on Ethereum. So we'll have more to say in a bit, but that we're not quite ready to roll that out because we have to finalize the native asset standard. And Polina and Rob Cohen are part of the people working on that, along with Jared. Some good people on that. When can you do a cold pledge for a pool? I would love to push that into Ledger's firmware. We're right now bidding out and building business requirements for an update for Ledger, and we call in Trezor, and we call this the Stake Pool Operators Update because we actually want to make it a device that SPOs can use to have an all-included security for their operations because it's hard to get all these things where they need to go. I keep seeing high returns on DeFi. Is that all BS? Remember, for every buyer, there's a seller. So who's buying from you? Think about that. How's the ranch running? Pretty good. When K increase? We're going to do a blog post about that. We're modeling that real hard. Don't you worry about the decentralization being at risk with when many of the top staking pools are run by IOHK. Remember, we only run 20 of the 1,000 pools that are registered. And yeah, we do have some ADA, but more than 70% of the ADA has not been staked, I believe. Or actually a little less than 70% has not been staked yet. And a lot of that's in Japan. So this early days, and what will end up happening is, well, we have a kind of a nice piece of the pie today. As more and more of that stake comes online, our piece of pie shrinks a bit. But it is a nice thing for all those Chicos and these other molten tar monsters when they say we sold all of our ADA. It's like, we were staking it, so we still have it, don't we? Huh? You know, we held. And now everybody can see that in a very explicit way. Who will construct the SPO testing certification standard courses? I suspect it's going to be a combination of the Cardano Foundation, and if organizations like Spakra ever get off the ground, we'll have a marketplace of credentials that form. It is in my view that it'd be a really good idea to have the foundation have some sort of certification program for SPOs. And if they do that, what we can do is actually load that into by Prism into Daedalus and actually show a slightly different presentation of the tiles, maybe change their color a little bit, just as a credentialing standard to say that they met a certain level of operating competency. It'd be really cool to do all that and have all those credentials on the blockchain, but that'd be fun. What programming language do you recommend for the absolute beginner? I would recommend Python. And Alan Downey wrote a great book called Think Python. It's a good starting point, very easy to get into, and it's very, there's just great pedagogy around Python. Do you have your own pool? I will set up a pool. I'm not going to tell you a name because somebody's going to take that name, but I will announce the name of the pool and all the metadata as soon as I've set it up. I just have not had the time. What do you think of Ethereum fees right now? They're too damn high. It's a broken system. This is why they're building ETH2 to replace Ethereum, because it's outlived its shelf life and it needs to be replaced. What do you think of sharding? It's shardtacular. Are you still friends with Adam Back after what he said about Cardano being a Ponzi scheme? I never was friends with Adam Back. He was an acquaintance. I knew him. We've talked over the phone, and we've met each other many times at different conferences from Japan to Mexico. And occasionally we have conversations now and then. But it's different generation, different culture, different person. I had a cordial relationship where we never had a fight in person, and there were friendly conversations. And it was incredibly surprising to me that he would say that I'm conducting a Ponzi scheme. I think Adam and a lot of these maximalists are frankly terrified of the proof of stake revolution, because their whole argument against proof of stake is it doesn't work and it's impossible. And if large cap cryptocurrencies and the industry as a whole moves to proof of stake, proof of work under the Bitcoin regime is unsustainable. So they lose their moral mandate very quickly. And that means their market cap very quickly. And I think he's terrified that his life's work and the work of Blockstream could be undone in 3 to 5 years. And that's why I think we've seen a renewed wave of maximalism, because the flippening could actually occur within 3 to 5 years. And I think Adam's trying desperately to cling to the past. He lives in the past. It's a bright guy. Blockstream is a bright company, and they could accomplish so much more if they were willing to work with people and collaborate with people as opposed to tearing people down. And, history is littered with a lot of people who like tearing other people down, and they seldom become great men, and they're seldom remembered. When Rogan after Gogan. Any plans for acquisitions? Not really. There's a few that we've looked at. I'd love to see more collaboration between Cardano and Horizon. I know you and Rob work great together. Anything already in discussion? We always talk to Rob from time to time, and the Horizon team is just a phenomenal team. They're an example of a great project, a great team, and great people, and they have been relentless in building a good product. And no matter what happens in the market or what needs to happen, they just keep investing and working at it. They've dealt certainly with some ups and downs and some personnel changes here and there. But the fact that they were able to survive that is a phenomenal example of the tenacity of Rob and his team. And I think he's one of the best guys in the space. And so I love working with him. I really do. And it'd be wonderful to do a project with him at some point. When shave date? Yeah, I got to clean that up. Why is Cardano so stagnant? We lost Shelly. We go up 700%. We're killing our KPIs. We're just knocking it all out of the park. 1,000 stake pools. We had 6 months worth of inflation that went live and the price didn't even go down. And then you got these speculator fucking children who show up, no clue about anything. They can't find their head from their ass. And they say, why is the price stalled? Why is everything stalled out? Oh my Lord, this space is great. It is it's the most unrealistic insanity I've ever seen in my life. Building real value takes time, and we've certainly constructed a lot of it, and we certainly have preserved a lot of it, and we're showing constant amazing growth in the ecosystem. That's the metric to follow. Whether the markets go up or down is completely dependent on Bitcoin and macro factors and these other things. That it's just a meaningless metric. It's a measuring contest that people have. You need to say, if I leave for 3 years and I come back, are you still there? And are you better in 3 years than the prior 3 years? That's the metric you look at. And look at where we launched in September of 2017 and look at where we're at today. And ask yourself, are we better today or are we better then? Great ecosystems, that's an easy answer. And that's what Cardano does. We are going to be completely decentralized, end to end. The first federated cryptocurrency in the history of the space to do that at this scale. And we're going to do that in less than 5 months, it looks like, at this current rate of decay. So that alone is a colossal accomplishment. I mean, it'd be like Ripple waking up one day and say, we're moving to proof of stake. They'd have to go through the exact same thing we went through, and they would have just as much pain. And to do it at this kind of scale, you guys saw how hard we had to work with the exchanges and what we've had to do there. That's a monumental accomplishment. And generally speaking, there's always a pullback after the event. There wasn't for us. So that's a good indicator of things to come. And we got a lot more on the roadmap to deliver. So guys, calm down, just relax. Life is good. The ecosystem's good. Utility is here. And we have delivered on some of the biggest promises ever made in the industry. The ability to do hard forks with the hard fork combinator and preserve the entire history and validate both systems. You know why your Daedalus slows down so much when you hit 98%? It's because you go from validating Byron rules to switching over to validate Shelley rules, and those aren't optimized. That's why you have that little tail synchronization issue. It's an annoyance, but it's actually a good case study. We're not running one set of rules. We're actually running 2 chains at once. There's no one else who's done that in this respect. It's a completely new concept, and we had to invent it out of thin air and implement and bring it in. And if you do it for 2, you can do it for N, which means that for the rest of time, we're going to have much easier hard forks than anyone else. And that's one of 1,000 things that's inside that code base that we accomplished and built as a project. That will be here now forever, and is a massive competitive advantage over Bitcoin, Ethereum, Tezos, or other systems. So that's the key, is that you have those things, and then you invest in those things, and you build into those things, and then developers see that, and they say, wow, that's an incredible platform. I want my token living there. I want my app living there. And we built Cardano for getting to 1 billion people. That's what we want. And so it'll take a long time to do that, lots of upgrades to get there, new protocols to get there, but we're building on granite, okay? And so that's the vision. And every 3 years when you look back, you say, it's just unbelievable the progress that's been made. If you're a speculator, don't play in our tank. Don't come here. Go to Tron, go to small cap coins, do those things and go play in that pond because they cater to those people. The only thing they sell is appreciation and speculation and promises of get rich quick, because they can't sell what we're selling, which is use and utility and a vision and this concept that this platform can replace the world financial system with the way it evolves. Okay, we're talking a different game here than what they're talking. And so if you're just in it to make money and get rich, go somewhere else. There's much better people for you. If you're in it to change the world and you're in it to give an economic identity to the billions of people who don't have it, grab a shovel, grab a pick, as those stake pool operators just did recently, and the ambassadors did before them, and Rick and Philippe did with the Cardano effect, and start digging. There's a lot of work to do, and it's going to take years to realize that dream. That's what this project is about. And I understand if that's not your thing, that's okay. It's a big ecosystem. Didn't the Wall Street Journal attend the summit? Yeah, I believe they did have a journalist there, and there's usually a latency when that occurs. Reuters attended, WSJ attended, Forbes and Fortune attended. We did get a Forbes article, and I think we did get a Fortune. I'd have to check on that, but I know we got a Forbes article. And that's pretty common. What happened to the air pollution energy pilot? We did do some air pollution work in Mongolia, but we haven't really made any progress on that. And there was some stalling. And then when we were going to come back to it, coronavirus hit. And that shut down every opportunity because there was some stuff that had to be done in person, and we couldn't physically send people into the country. The good news is that the air quality, well, good and bad news, the air quality is still terrible in Ulaanbaatar, so there's always an opportunity to do that. So we will get back to it, and that's not going to be a problem. How's your goose doing? I have geese, strings and wings, 2, not 1, 2. You always have to get pairs of geese because they keep each other company, and they never leave each other's sides. They always run around. Greetings from Bosnia, beautiful country. Hi, Hosk. Sexy Rena Network set up in Japan on our nationwide ISP using our light. We are forking the code. Should cost a lot less to build out a global network. Do you think we could apply for a C fund or DC fund? Definitely DC fund. That's actually really cool. And actually, I'd highly encourage you to talk to Neil. Neil is one of the scientists that work with us, and he runs a company called Predictable Network Solutions. And he's kind of the in-house RENA domain expert. But if you ping me over Twitter, I'd be happy to set up a meeting and actually have you guys chat. I'm always curious to see commercial deployments of RENA. We have RENA light concepts in the Cardano network stack, but we never implemented full stack RENA because you can't really realize RENA unless you have hardware for it. Binance staking. They did reach out to us to talk about that, and we'll keep pushing that. Charles, please explain Kyoditas. So Kyoditas is basically a marketplace for deduction. So basically, it gives you the ability to take a mathematical statement. And so a mathematical statement is a series of logical statements. And they can be expressed as what are called well-formed formulas. And they carry truth values, and they're connected to each other. And then they basically sum up to a conclusion. And if the argument is logically valid, then you've proven something, hopefully the right thing. Okay. So you can have a very simplistic statement like there are infinitely many prime numbers, and the canonical proof there is proof by contradiction. So you assume there are finite many, and then you show a contradiction with that assumption, and therefore the opposite is true. There are infinitely many. And what mechanization is about is use a language like Coq or Agda or Lean or Mizar or Automath to basically express that statement in a way that a computer can understand and then basically agree that it's true, given that you have the right set of axioms. So you have to build an environment, you have to set a set of axioms, and then basically you can construct a proof almost like programming. And if it compiles and there's no bugs, hopefully you've actually shown that the statement is correct. Now, this is super appealing in a certain respect for mathematicians because certain proofs are so complicated that proof assistants can be used to help take some of the trickier areas and express those trickier areas in a way that you can get some certainty that what you're looking at is right. We even use this in the computer science sense. We do this, for example, with Ouroboros, the forkable string theory that we had in the original Ouroboros paper. A team out of Cambridge University led by Lawrence Paulson took and wrote over 10,000 lines of Isabelle code, which is another one of those special languages for this, to check the forkable string theory and verify that it is indeed correct. The downside is that these proofs tend to be very hard to write. They follow a branch called constructive mathematics, and they're not super satisfying for how a normal mathematician will write a proof. There's a bit of a disconnect between normal math and this weird computer math that people do. So Kyoditas is a project which wants to create a marketplace for deduction, to actually incentivize mathematicians to write proofs in a way computers can understand and then pay you if you can solve and prove things. So it's a really cool idea, and it's going to force the evolution of proof assistance and actually the way, in my view, to make it work is to move from ZFC set theory to a different foundation of mathematics. And I think homotopy type theory is the way to go, because that's very well expressible in a way computers can understand. Loff was really the first big mover there, but then you have like Voevodsky and other people who've done seminal work. So it's a very complicated product, and then it's very specialized for mathematicians, not for normal people. But it's a very useful product, because if you can get the incentives right, then you can do thousands of man-years of math, mechanizing the great tree of mathematics to a point where computers can understand a lot about it. Then, if you have enough of it, you can apply AI and you can apply other things to it to assist in mathematical research, because you can kind of get around how these mechanized proofs are going to work, and you can understand a lot about how a field works, like number theory. And then you can potentially allow the computer to help imagine and dream with the mathematician, and help the computer go back and forth on hypotheses and patterns and these types of things, which are the bread and butter of a lot of AI programming. So you need a certain foundation to be constructed and a certain level of understandability on a computer side before you can actually do interesting, useful things. To get to that level requires thousands of man-years of formalization and constructive mathematics. So you need to create an incentive system to pay people to do that work. It's almost like AutoTurk for mathematicians. And that's what QAdidas could potentially facilitate, is an economic layer to get that done and crowdsource the automation of all mathematics. So it's a project I'll start next year, and I'll likely launch it as a token on Cardano. And it'll have an off-chain component that runs all the proof logic and other such things. And there's a lot of really super technical things that we need to do. And there's likely going to be some strong opinions we're going to have to bring to the table. Like maybe we resurrect the Mizar project and build that up, or maybe we do some core development work in Agda, or perhaps if Lean 4 ever comes out, we can do some things with it. So there's a lot of things to think about there. Please tell us the story of the gladiator painting on your right shoulder. So that's a Jean-Louis Jerome. And what I love most about that painting is that you see the gladiator who's standing on the other guy's neck, and the guy's doing this to surrender. That's a typical thing in Roman lore. But normally the gladiator who's vanquished the other gladiator, the one who's standing on the gladiator, would look to the emperor. And the emperor is sitting in the stands in that purple robe. And you'll notice that the gladiator instead is looking to the audience, not the emperor. And the audience are all giving the thumbs down. And the emperor is very angry. He's just like looking like, wait a minute, you're disrespecting me. And this is a great reminder about hubris. And I think he captured it, Jean-Leon captured it so beautifully in this painting, where you have this guy who's obviously at the apex of his ability. So he's a legendary gladiator, and he can defeat anyone within his domain. And as a consequence, it gets to his head, and he starts thinking that he's a big guy outside of his domain. He's there to please the crowd on behalf of the emperor. He's not there to please the crowd, including the emperor. So you should always look to the emperor and not to the crowd. But the fact that he's looking to the crowd means that his days are numbered. His hubris will be his undoing. And it's a good reminder for anybody who finds their way into wealth and power. And it's a good reminder for anybody who finds their way into any degree of prominence, that no matter how great you think you are or what you've accomplished, if you look to the wrong person or to the wrong crowd, it will be your undoing. So don't fall in love with those who fall in love with you. Know your place and never forget that. I've been making real progress in learning around your security fundamentals video. Almost done. Thanks for that. I'm going to do a follow-up pretty soon. Everything in that video is great. I'm just a little concerned about the backup on the YubiKey. So I'm going to show an alternative way of doing that, and I'd recommend you rotate your keys and verify that that backup works. The backup that I generated in the video, I can't restore it for some reason. It can read the key, but it won't restore. And I'm looking into that. And it's just one of those weird quirks that exists with Cleopatra. And I'm not sure why it didn't create a proper backup. It created a .gpg, which is normally an encrypted file, as opposed to a .asc file. So everything else is great. just be advised that the backup for that key might not actually be there. And because you can lose that key, that's a problem. So my recommendation is just use single PGP encryption with your hotkey until I resolve the YubiKey thing, and then I'll show you a way of generating the keys and then transferring them using a command line called key to card. And then you know for a fact that backup is restorable. And then you store that backup on the Apricorn secure drive, and everything should be fine. But other than that, a lot of people like that video. What happens to Cardano if your contract isn't extended? We'll always be in the Cardano ecosystem. It's just we'd like to be part of the core development set because we feel that that's awesome. But the point of decentralization is always embracing the possibility that our time is finite. So we never take it as a guarantee. The community will make a decision what is the best path forward, and we will make a case for a path forward. And the community will ultimately decide. And if they decide that they want to go in a different direction, well, then that's the direction. And we'll still build on it because we think Cardano is the best platform. And we're not going anywhere. And I think there's a lot more work to do. There's at least 5 to 10 years of more research, development, other things to really get us to a point where I feel comfortable to say, yeah, this can service 1 billion people. And I think people are going to be super excited with what we propose in 2021. It's really innovative and insanely great. But I can't tell you about it now. It was like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates when they were being interviewed together at All Things D by Walt Mossberg back in 2007. And Steve was like, oh, yeah, the phone we're building is so incredible and so amazing, but I can't tell you anything about it. So he was talking about the iPhone. And Walt's like, come on, you bastard. Tell me more about this iPhone thing. And Steve's like, no, I can't say anything about it. But all I can tell you is it's revolutionary and game-changing and insanely great. And Bill Gates is just sitting there with that little smile on his face like, oh, Steve, I've seen you do this since 1984 with the Macintosh. It can't be that great. And Steve's like, it's great. You're going to like it. One of the best interviews you guys will ever watch in your life. If you go to YouTube and you just type in 2007 Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Walt Mossberg, and watch that whole interview. It's about an hour or so long. It's absolutely extraordinary. And it's just a piece of history. And it's amazing to see these two titans of industry who were just such fierce competitors, and they had evolved to friends, sit down and talk in such a frank and open way. And College Humor did a beautiful recut of it where they took clips from that hour-plus interview, and they made it like Bill Gates and Steve Jobs were in a gay marriage. So watch both of those. Watch the interview first, and then watch the College Humor Steve Jobs, Bill Gates clip. It's amazing. Walt's a good guy. Chainlink is worth $2 billion more than Cardano. Do you think this makes sense? Microsoft was worth more than Apple. I mean, Tesla's worth more than Ford and GM together, and Toyota. Markets are markets. They're weird sometimes. You don't look at today. You look at the average over a long period of time after people have had a sense to properly price things. Everybody has their time in the sun. Question: using VRF introduced a large probability of block collision and forks in chain. How does Cardano migrate this issue? You're a clever questioner. That's a very difficult problem. So I would encourage you to go to YouTube and to the iWHK YouTube channel. And we actually have a 30-40 minute video presentation on Ouroboros Praos, Praos, which is the current protocol in production in Cardano. And actually, Akalos Kassis, our chief scientist, spends quite a bit of time on just that question about how do you get from a source of semi-dirty randomness, a protocol where you can get rid of adaptive corruption. So you have adaptive security, so multiple people could contextually make blocks at the same time, and you have these micro forks, but the protocol can converge, and those micro forks aren't a problem. And he kind of goes through that whole conversation. It's pretty involved and pretty technical, and it's not really suitable for an AMA like this. But I'd highly encourage you to watch that video, and it explains it very specifically. And then if you're not convinced, then read the paper itself, and there's a very rigorous mathematical argument specifically on this matter. Algorand also uses a VRF in a somewhat similar way. So there's multiple proof-of-stake protocols that look along those lines. There's certainly things you can do to improve the VRF, like we are looking at a blending of a VDF with a VRF. And then we've also been talking about potentially creating a post-quantum VRF in an anticipation of a post-quantum agenda. That's one of the pillars of that. And you can use other cryptographic beacons, like you can even use a proof of work as a way of generating a cryptographic beacon. So you just have to be careful about that. The original Ouroboros protocol, Ouroboros Classic, we used an MPC protocol based on a Crypto 99 paper, and that's been superseded with the VRF that we're using. But it's a great question. How would an accountant with zero programming experience learn to create a dApp smart contract for Cardano? Scotty, that's why we created Marlowe. Marlowe is paint by numbers. You have these little blocks, you drag them and click them together, and it designs a smart contract visually with no programming experience required. You just have to think about the logic of what you're doing, and then auto-generates the code. So look at Marlowe, M-A-R-L-O-W-E. And we actually have a whole course on Udemy explaining how to use that. Domain-specific languages are how you bring domain experts like accountants and lawyers into a technical ecosystem because they have a great degree of knowledge in their domain, but they're not professional programmers. So you give them a simple language to build things like Lego bricks in their domain, and they know it's right because it matches their understanding of the domain, and the computer will figure out how to implement that. You know, it's called declarative programming, and it's a really good idea. You tell the computer what you want instead of telling the computer how to do it. And by the way, Marlowe is already implemented and ready to go. So when we launch Goguen, Marlowe's coming along right with it. And it was built from the ground up specifically for financial products to avoid a lot of mistakes that people make when they build complex financial products. So you don't have all these DeFi things blow up in your face because you screwed something up in Solidity. Do you ever scroll through 4chan or Biz? I have a spider, a web spider scraper, excuse me, that I've wrote years ago in Python that I run every day, and it pulls up a report on a lot of different keywords, some with my name, some with Cardano, and then other key search terms that I get. And then I look at the output report every morning, and occasionally it picks up things in 4chan. So, and those are always just horrible. Every now and then they say I'm a Chad, but usually I'm a soy boy, which is extraordinary because I live on a 50-acre farm, grow my own food. I drive a Lamborghini. I do whatever the fuck I want to do. I say whatever the hell I want to say. I thought that's pretty Chad, but I guess 4chan thinks differently because we're not assholes to other people. It's a cesspool, and it's what happens when you have no accountability for what people say. They basically just activate their id, and they just say whatever's on their mind, regardless of what it is. So you take it for what it is. You don't really think about it. Don't let it bother you. Would you let random thoughts in your mind bother you? I can't believe I thought that. Oh, well, no, you just let it pass. It's almost like meditation. One of the first things you learn when you learn to meditate is to be aware of your thoughts, but not get bothered by them. You watch them as a dispassionate observer. I've heard it described as there's a busy road, and you get yourself a nice lawn chair, and you're just sitting there with your beer, watching the cars come by. And those are your thoughts. Those are the things. So you're aware of the cars, you see them, you experience them, but you don't react to them, okay? Because they're just driving by. You're not connected to that. And 4chan is that. It's the cars. These bizarre things are going to be driving by, and you're aware of it, but you don't react to it, okay? Never react to it. I'm going to start painting here pretty soon. I bought the Bob Ross book. I'm gonna Bob Ross the shit out of it. And actually, if I get good, I am so gonna resurrect the joy of painting. Because I got the animals, I got the farm, I got like the birds and the squirrels and the dogs and everything. So I can just so pull a Bob Ross. It's gonna be great. And every Saturday, I'll just like do a podcast, and I'll say like, okay, we're gonna paint a pretty little tree. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be super therapeutic. You guys are gonna watch it, I guarantee you. What functionality do you want to add to Daedalus? Multi-sig, secure QR codes to transfer credentials and restore wallets, the voting center, the hardware wallet center. We already have the stake center. Huzzah. Yeah, all right. That's nice, right? And obviously all the mechanics for smart contracts, including a command line, the ability to submit smart contracts to the blockchain, read them, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot there. And then new account creation to make it simpler, performance improvements, better user experience. We even hired a user experience expert. We're going to reskin some things. So there's a huge amount of stuff to do on that backlog. And we're actually going to scale up the team so that we can do that. You need to grow a fro then. Well, I got the beard. Maybe I'll just comb the beard over to the head. Can you make an NFT of your paintings, please? What I'll do is if I make those beautiful little paintings is that I'll hold competitions for ADA holders, and I'll just give them all away. So every time I do an AMA or something, then I'll come up with some lottery style system that's on the Cardano blockchain. And then somebody will be able to win and prove that they've won, and then they can get the painting or something like that. So it's a good way to distribute it. It's really sad what happened to a lot of Bob Ross paintings. I was just wondering how big is the IWHK team? We actually have 250 people. As for the United States, 20 or 30 people in the US. I can't remember the exact amount. We're all around different aggregation points. What's your favorite type of beer? Well, it's a dry year, but when I do drink, my favorite beer to drink is in Greece. I go to this little diner called God's Restaurant. It's right next to the Acropolis Museum. It's like one of those tourist traps. And they have this mythos beer that they serve in these big mugs. It's just really, really good. Incredibly. I'm not a big beer guy, but that's such good beer. The second best beer is the Kronenhall over in no, not the Krogan, the Zoig Hassler or something. It's another one of those tourist trap restaurants. They have a sausage on a sword. It's in Zurich nearby the Bahnhof, and they have these giant mugs of beer they serve, and you just ask for the local stuff, the local Swiss stuff. It comes out. It's amazing. Drink the whole thing. You're drunk off your ass, and you're eating your Wiener Schnitzel and sausage. You're having a good night. Japanese whiskey or versus American whiskey? That's not even a question. Japanese whiskey versus Scottish whiskey. That's a question. Don't even think about American. It's like, I'm sorry. Just don't do that. You guys are crazy. I love America. I'm the most patriotic guy in the world, but we did not win the whiskey war. We didn't. It's the Scots or the Japs or the Irish. Hibiki or Yamazaki. And of course, you'll have some hipster with the man bun being like, no, this off-label brand no one's ever heard about is far better than anything else you drink. Oh, fuck you. You drink Macallan 30, you're going to tell me your little hipster thing is great, better than that. It's like everybody has to be, a contrarian. Everybody has to have this off-label boutique thing that's like so amazing and so great. My shoes are made of hemp. Yeah. I'm an accountant who just learned PHP and basic web stack. Will be learning the curve of Plutus be easy, like learning PHP. It'll be harder because it's a functional programming language. But we are building an imperative version. I just signed a contract today to begin exploring that. And if we've done it right, it may actually be easier to get from PHP to there. But going from imperative to functional is a little bit of a transition. And I'm going to see if I can find a way to smooth that as much as possible. But it's not impossible. It's certainly possible. It just takes a few weeks of patience to get over a certain bit of a learning curve. And then once you're familiar with that, you go there. So maybe like JavaScript to Ramda. And then once you've done that, then you go to Plutus. And that's a good path. I don't know if just going purely functional is the way to go. We'll think about it. The part of ACID is figuring out dev adoption, and that's just not functional developers, but also transitioning imperative developers into our ecosystem. And we will develop a pedagogy that fits well with that. But congratulations on getting through it. Hypertext preprocessing is cool stuff. Mark Zuckerberg built Facebook with it. Loved it so much he created Hack. Yeah, damn hipsters indeed. You guys keep asking about Polkadot. I really don't care about Polkadot. It's like Gap's thing. Okay, do your stuff. Yeah, I don't really view them as a competitor. I don't really view them as a bad project. They're just a project, like many others. The same with Cosmos. And I don't worry about that stuff. It doesn't keep me up at all. I wake up every day and I say, how do I build something a billion people can use and make it useful for them and get it to a point a billion people do use that? If you're so obsessed with your competitors, you're looking behind you. You should be looking ahead of you into the trails you want to blaze and the innovations you have to bring to beat them to the market. And then they all follow you. We were the first to talk about third generation cryptocurrency. A lot of people copied us. And a lot of people are going to copy Cardano here on out and pretend like they were, of course, there. But we all know what the OG is. You should share your web scraper. I might actually do a course and teach people how to write it and show people how to write a web scraper. I used Scrapey, which is a nice library for that. Thoughts on the Lebanon explosion? My understanding, it was just a bunch of fertilizer that was sitting way too long. Charles, one Hawaiian shirt. I lived in Hawaii. This man needs a PR agent? No, I don't. My life is good for me. Come on now. And I lived in Hawaii for over 10 years. I have tons of shirts. If you live in Hawaii, you're born in Hawaii, you're allowed to wear a Hawaiian shirt. Your grandfather did. My wife ran away with my best friend, and I miss him. Well, what makes Hydra better than sharding? There are complementary solutions, and Hydra is much easier to implement in an existing system without the trade-offs of sharding. So you don't lower security, but you still get a lot of performance and throughput. New contract with Grigori coming? Yeah, we got to figure that out. Do you like Dodge? No, especially the RAM. I hate all of them. No Dodge RAM. And the Hellcats are nice, but no, nothing. I will never buy a Dodge ever. Very traumatized with that whole brand. There's bad blood with me and Dodge, man. Bad blood. And that brand is dead. Visibly makes me sick to my stomach when I think of the Dodge Ram. I have GMC trucks, 2500 and a 1500, 2500 diesel, Allison transmission. Yeah, Duramax engine. Way to go. My wife is jealous when I watch your videos instead of her TikTok videos. Your wife uses TikTok? Michael, I have some concerns there. Get her off that platform. Corvette fan, have you seen the mid-engine Corvette? It looks like my Lamborghini. Heaven's sakes. I never thought I'd see the day that they had a mid-engine Corvette. It's pretty crazy. How do you eat your steak? Medium rare, dry aged, 30 days with salt. A pool with 116,000 steak made a block. How about that, Rick? Man. By the way, this is just the early days for incentives, and we're going to work really hard to continue trying to make it more fair and more egalitarian and to promote decentralization. So we're going to think about alternatives and additional incentives and rewards models, especially for the little guy. So while we did our best to get an initial system out, by no means is it the final system, and we're going to keep pushing really hard for the little guy, because nothing makes me happier than when I hear about a guy with 116,000 ADA making a block. That's awesome. It doesn't take a lot to contribute, and I want to build a world where people like that can contribute, and hopefully the majority of blocks are built that way. The problem is the science is super fucking hard, and it requires a lot of thought. But the good news is that we now have SPOs contributing, financial mathematicians contributing, the Oxford algo game theory people contributing, the regular cryptographers contributing, and the broader ecosystem with everybody who's doing staking contributing. So there's a great marketplace of ideas there. And with just the right leadership and a lot of aggressive research, we can make those models better over time. Was Dan Larimer correct about his comment about Cardano not being able to handle non-DeFi applications? We have higher performance and lower latency than Ethereum does. And Ethereum is the dominant non-DeFi and DeFi platform in the space. So if we're faster and better than Ethereum, and Ethereum has all those apps, how is Dan correct in saying we can't run them? Does anybody think? I mean, it's like they just listen to this guy. It's like, okay, wrap your head around free transactions and the consequences of that. It's craziness. It's absolute craziness. Fountain pen nib size, medium. My current Satoshi, no. Bubba made a block with 261,000 stake. Yeah. Congratulations, guys. Would you invest in Tesla? I had a chance to invest in the IPO. I think it was around $19. I didn't do it. No, it's well overpriced now. It's a bubble. Suppose ETC recognizes the value of taking Cardano's help. What does Cardano look like after that? We're in a strategic partnership and we do things to work with each other. And I still wake up every single day with the same dream. The mission of my company is to help the billions of people who don't have economic identity get it through innovations in value, identity, and governance. That's our mission. And we don't stop till we get it done. And Cardano is the dominant platform for that because it's a financial operating system. So it's a very different thing from a highly principled code as law platform. They're different things. So there are services and values we can provide them, and there's potentially some things they can provide Cardano. So if we somehow get a treasury system in and stick around long term, we'll innovate there. And it'll hurt Ethereum probably more than it hurts any other ecosystem. We'll get some of their developers. But Cardano is going to grow in a different way with a different demographic, and it's going to change the world. It's the biggest project I've ever been on in my life. And to be frank, nothing means more to me than Cardano as a project. I love Ethereum, and it's certainly a big part of my life. And I will always be there where and when I can to help out the real Ethereum Classic, if it needs it. And I'll, of course, be able to innovate there and really do some great things there. But let's be clear here. Cardano is Cardano. I spent 5 years of my life with Cardano. Every day waking up, actually more than 5 years, every day waking up, pushing and pushing and pushing and building teams and doing science and thinking carefully about how do we get things done. And all these people tried to kill it along the way. Relentless criticism, relentless attacks, threats of this, threats of that, division, strife, Michael Parsons, this and that, this and that, this and that. And we survived all that. You don't walk away from that. You become a fanatic. You have to be a fanatic to be able to survive all of that and get through it and get to the other side. And now, at the dawn of Shelley, we actually see the fruits of those labors, where even small stake pools are making blocks as I speak. And that's the beginning. What happens when we have native assets and smart contracts and hundreds of thousands of dApps and thousands of assets on our system and millions of users? Do we walk away? No, because we say, how do we get this to 1 billion? How do we get this to 2 billion, to 3 billion? How do we change the entire world financial system to be this? Because this is right. It's moral and it's pure. That's the trajectory that I'm on. And we work on other things. I do work in agriculture with, things like that. Aquaculture and controlled environment agriculture. I'm very happy to explore that and spawn my own fish and grow all kinds of cool things in greenhouses. I'm building a game development studio for Legends of Valor. I drive really fast cars and go racing. I skydive stuff, all these things. Okay. Wingsuits. These are hobbies and they're fun. And some are side businesses and they're fun side businesses. And within those domains, you can innovate and do really cool things. But your primary career, if you're going to live a good life, it has to be a life of meaning. Like what Viktor Frankl said in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, the whole field of logotherapy. Find meaning in life, something worth fighting for, that you are willing to die for. And you will never work a day in your life if you're on that path, if that's the purpose of your existence. And no matter what criticism you get, you just don't care. Because at the end of the day, it's like you know who you are and why you do what you do. And if you're successful or not successful, the very act of doing it is what gives you happiness. It's the concept of ikigai, the art of life, the practice of life. Okorowari was another Japanese concept. It means the relentless pursuit of perfection. And so these are very complementary concepts in that respect. And so the key to living a good life is find a mission so inspiring, you'd want to do it every single day, and you're relentless about doing it better every single day. You wake up the next day and say, how do I do even more and I can be even better than before? We have 1,000 stake pools. How do I wake up the next day and get to 1,100 stake pools? We're pretty decentralized, more so than anybody else. How do I be the most decentralized ever? How do I get more resilience? I'm resistant against classical computation. How do I get resistant against quantum computation? Because I can future-proof the system. How do we make the treasury system better? How do we get another partner for this? That's the relentless pursuit of perfection. You never achieve it. And no matter what you get, there's always the next step and there's the next day. But there's joy in that. It's like pushing a boulder up a hill. You never have to get it to the top of the hill. It can roll all the way back down, like Albert Camus' story of Sisyphus. Go all the way back down to the bottom of the hill. You grab the boulder, you push it up. And the game then is, let's push it better and faster and with more confidence than the first time that I pushed it up. And it rolls back down. You go do it again. And the third time, let's do it better than the second time. This inductive increase in the ability. And if you can truly find happiness in that, you're unstoppable. Because no matter what happens, you have clarity of purpose. And I found that with Cardano. We do everything. We have the governance, we have the identity, we have the value. We think about all these fundamental domains, and we can walk into any room, systems theory people, scientists, economists, business people, politicians, medical people, supply chain people, lawyers. Today, I had a phenomenal conversation with a senior partner at a New York law firm, and we spent an hour talking about detailed, intricate things about regulation. No matter who you talk to, you have something to contribute because the system touches all of that in a nutshell. That is a damn good life. And that's what Cardano gives me, is to be at the center of that, all those things, and to be able to have an opinion about all those things and how they synthesize together into a grand whole system, and then share that with everybody else. We recognize that security is hard, so I get to make a security video. And then hundreds of people all around the internet wake up and tell me how to make that video better. And I read their comments and they say, maybe we should switch from YubiKey to NitroKey. Maybe we should use Bitwarden over LastPass or this or that. And those are opinions. And I look at them, I think about them, and I say, some are good, some are bad. And you know what? The next video, it's better than the last one. It took me 5 tries to make the video that I released. The 6th one will be far better than any of the 5 that I made. And I'll wake up one day, it'll be the 12th one, which will be far better than the 11th. And the act of doing that is what is the meaning of life for me. So it's a summary is Cardano is the life's work. It will never be done, and I'll probably never stop working on it. I'm always going to be doing that. It's always there. And it's a life well spent. Best Japanese whiskey you ever tasted? A Hibiki 25-year-old anniversary edition that I had at a cigar bar in Tokyo, in Shibuya. Really good stuff. You might fool these ADA holders, Charles, but to anyone with life experience, you're nothing but a fraud. See, these are the kinds of comments I love. They actually get me up in the morning. They say, you're a fraud, you're a fraud, you're a fraud. It's like, tell them what you're going to do. We're going to build the world's best proof of stake system. Do it. We launched Shell8. Tell them what you did. How do you guys like Shell8? Anybody make a block? But I'm a fraud, right? And why is my economic system any worse than the economic systems built by my peers or by the past? Tell me, how long does it take to send a wire transfer? Why do we need custodians? Why do we need the existing settlement clearing systems and middlemen for payment processors? Is it easy to get a loan? Are you honestly confident that everybody has access to credit? Can you manage your risk really well? Can everybody manage their risk really well? Is there a lot of innovation in insurance markets? Securities markets working really well? How much money does it cost to do a securities offering? And who is that available to? How many poor people do we have in the world? Why are all the people protesting in the streets about Occupy Wall Street and then later on BLM and these other things? And one of the core things they keep talking about is class disparity. Why is it when our economy in the United States goes down 30%, the billionaires make $600 billion of excess money? Is that fair? Is there something right in that economy? Why is it that productivity has gone up 400% over the last 30 years, but people work more hours today than my grandfather worked and make less? He raised 7 kids by himself with his stay-at-home wife and retired a millionaire off a lineman's salary on my mom's side. Nowadays, both parents have to work and they retire in debt with no savings. Something's wrong there. The economic system is rigged, and it's rigged against the middle class and the poor people. The point of our industry is to rebalance the scales and build a new system that doesn't just benefit a small group of people and enslave the rest. The point of the system is to take all that wealth that's been created and make it a little bit more fair without undoing the world economy. Rather, the opposite, create new wealth and new businesses. The very system I created put new people in business. There are people waking up every day and they have a job title, stake pool operator. Before Cardano existed, that was not a job. Now it is, just like eBay Power Seller is. How is that a fraud? You tell me. If it works, it's better than the past, and people are participating at the scale of hundreds of thousands, soon to be millions. Doesn't that seem like a new economy? And if it's voluntary and people came into that new economy and they participate in that new economy, it provides real value and utility to them. So people get their livelihoods from that new economy. How is that fraudulent? What seems fraudulent to me is a system that enslaves people and then uses propaganda and violence to keep itself in power, which is the system that we have today. And that system needs to die. And it'll either kill itself because it'll get so terrible and so bad, it will bankrupt the entire world and collapse it to anarchy and chaos, or people will wake up, opt out of it, get into a new system. That's why Bitcoin was created. Magic internet money, and it's worth hundreds of billions of dollars today, just 11 years after it was created. That's not a bubble. That is an example of a movement leaving the system of our forefathers, which happens to be corrupt and evil, and entering into a system that has integrity. And the more people who do it, the more powerful that system becomes. And eventually that will be the dominant system, not the one of the past. And the one of the past will wither away on the vine. If that's fraudulent, I don't want to be right. I'd rather be a fraudster. Hey, Charles, how does someone apply for a project to the C Fund? We are in the process of building the fund with the partner, and we're waiting for some regulatory stuff and the lawyers to get everything done. Once that's done, a website will come up, and then a formal thesis and all this other stuff, and there'll be an email address. In the interim, we've set up a temporary email address, invest@iohk.io. Send everything over. I can't guarantee we'll read it. We're busy, but we'll have a formal page and all those things ready to go once that's done. We're getting it set up, though. Just takes a little bit of time. Fraud is pumping up the ADA market cap to 35 billion. No, the market did that. We didn't do anything. It's called 2017, son. Happened to everybody. Rising tide. Second, little to no code written. It was a fully finished product. Byron existed. It was a federated product like Ripple. Okay. People had it, had liquidity. We never sold any ADA. We never participated in any trading, but yet we're fraudulent because you say so. Think about that. You see, this is what people do: scam, fraud, dishonest, bad, not like, nothing. All the things you've done are invalidated because one thing happened I didn't like, et cetera, et cetera. You know, it's a thought process, and it's a cognitive loop that they get stuck on. And then they say you're just a bad guy, and all you ADA holders, you're just stupid. You're unwashed masses. You're here because you read the papers. Oh, those papers don't exist. You're here because you looked at the code. No, that code doesn't exist. You're here because you're doing something with it. No, you couldn't possibly be doing something with it because, oh, well, it doesn't exist. It's not real. There are still people today that think Cardano doesn't have any code. There are still people today who think that we haven't written any code since February because Crypto Miso refuses to update the repos. And as a result, they're showing a deprecated repo we no longer commit code to. There are still people today that think Shelley hasn't shipped. And you can tell them, they'll just ignore you. It's like those people who think the earth is only 6,000 years old. No burden of evidence, no burden of science you apply to show them that will ever convince them otherwise. They're fanatics in that respect. People don't like being wrong, and they'll go to enormous lengths to justify their beliefs, right or wrong. And that's how it is. And, is this a good industry? No, it's a neutral industry. There's a huge amount of up and there's a huge amount of down because it's a human industry. And humans aren't good. Humans are neutral. They do good things, they do bad things. They hurt people, they help people. There's sinners and saints in the same people. So if this industry reflects them, it is a mirror that shows us the inconvenient truth of human nature. And this is the beautiful juxtaposition of cryptocurrencies in a third respect. They show you your sins, and you may not want to admit them, but they show them to you. It's why Ethereum Classic exists. It's why Bitcoin exists. They are symbols to when decisions were made that contradict what you intended them to be. In the case of Bitcoin, we said the world financial system has to work in a particular way, and it decided it didn't have to, and bailout culture began. Too big to fail began. So Bitcoin was created on the back of that. And right in the very first block was a reference to the bailouts. The case of Ethereum Classic, a promise of illegality was given. Code is law. You can't change the code. The code doesn't care. The system doesn't care about the consequences of the code it runs. It's a neutral party. But this particular case, for the greater good, let's intervene and change things. So now Ethereum Classic exists. You see, these are mirrors, and they're inconvenient because they show you when you've made a mistake as a society, or lied to people, or built a deceptive system. You need these things to get better. You need to see yourself naked in the mirror and see the fat and the ugliness, and then be honest about it. And when you see it, then you say, okay, I'll go on the diet. Okay, I'll go start exercising. If you don't see these things, you don't have a problem. It's like delusion. You can just put a cloak on and pretend it's not a problem until it kills you. And that's the world we live in right now. Social media allows us to see all the sins of other people, and then we can harshly criticize them, but then we pretend like we have none. It allows us to express bizarre opinions and then live in echo chambers and pretend that all the enlightened, reasonable people hold those opinions and everyone else is wrong. And then we silo out, and then we judge people for not having our enlightened opinion. Cryptocurrencies don't care about any of that. Blockchains don't care about any of that. They don't care about how you feel. They're the least fraudulent of all things humanity has ever constructed, and the closest thing we have to an economic law of physics. And by the way, money, this is an interesting question. Why do you like talking about fraud? Are you self-conscious that all money is fraud? In a certain respect, it is. Money is a collective delusion. Why is it a piece of paper is worth anything? It has a dead president on it. Here you go, $20 bill. Here's your Andrew Jackson. Why is that worth anything? Because some other people told you that. And you believe that somebody's going to accept that. So when I pay you, you think you can take that note and go and buy something with it. That's why you accept it. I'll tell you a great story. When I first moved to Switzerland years ago with the Ethereum project, we had this consultant who worked with us. His name was Herbert Sturchy. And Herbert, standard Swift guy, Mr. Fix-It. Everything's great. Everything's unbelievable. I'm here for you, blah, blah, blah. Super helpful. Then when it came time to pay him, we said, can we pay you with Bitcoin? And he said, I don't know about that. I need Swiss francs. Fine. And then we said, hey, can you give us a ride to Bitcoin Suisse? It was an exchange, very small at the time. Now it's quite large. It's Nicholas is a great guy. He runs Bitcoin Suisse quite well. And we go and we exchange some Bitcoin for Swiss francs. And it was a large amount. We got like 20 or 30,000 francs or something. I can't remember the exact amount. And we go through the whole process and everything, checks their passports and all this stuff. And Herbert's just watching this, where we just on our phone send these weird Bitcoin things he's never heard of before to this guy. We exchange it out. We have all these francs. Great. And then when Herbert's driving back, he says, you can pay me in Bitcoin now. It's okay. Why? Because he knows he can exchange it to something that he knows has value. So now Bitcoin has value because he saw that, he witnessed it, and his belief changed. And that's the nature of money. Look at the island of Yap with rice stones. That's another great example of it. The Chinese used to use tea as money, and they'd break it off. They actually had these little divots, and they break them into units. Okay, money is social consensus. The death camp Stalag used to use cigarettes as a currency source. An economist who was there wrote a paper about it while he was waiting to get out of the camp. So money doesn't exist. It's not real. But because we believe it's real, it is real. That's the bizarre nature of money. And human beings, when they can believe in abstractions, whether it be religions, money, corporations, political power, like Trump is the president. When he got elected the president, did we somehow change his DNA? Did somehow he wake up the next day and he got a third arm? Is he a cyborg now with like robotic powers and things like? No. We've just bestowed upon him a social consensus that somehow makes him powerful. He can now pardon people and pick up the phone and order a military to do something. But if you ever ask yourself, what if the social consensus falls apart? What if people just wake up and say, well, we just don't want this guy to be president anymore? Will they listen to him? Will they act on his orders? No, they don't really have to. It's the same for a corporation. I'm the CEO of IOG. And I call my employee up and say, you need to do this. And they say, yes. But what if they wake up and they say, yeah, I'm just not going to do it? Technically have the legal right, but that's an abstraction too. It's all abstractions. It's all fiction if you think about it. Power is a fiction. It's reciprocal. Money is a fiction. Religion is a fiction. And these are fictions of convenience that we believe, stories that we believe as a society to build and preserve society. It is in our best interest, emotionally, safety, physically, survival, to believe in fictions and hierarchies and power dynamics and magic people in the sky and so forth. And if your fiction is particularly powerful, you can run an empire. If your fiction is particularly powerful, you can compel people to do great things, like go to the moon, okay? Or to win a war or start a war, terrible things. So never forget that. Greatest author in the world to enumerate and elaborate this is Yuval Harari in his book Sapiens and Homo Deus, both those books. They really get to the root cause of all of it. So, you think about fraud, and it's like, it's one of those things that it's a value situation. And in many cases, especially when you deal with money, why is one money good over another money? Why is the Zimbabwean dollar any better than the US dollar or worse than the US dollar? Well, because it's volatile. Why is it volatile? Well, because of belief in markets, ultimately. And why is Bitcoin valuable? Because markets made it valuable. But why did markets do that? Because people believe it. They believe that tomorrow all the miners are going to show up and continue mining. Why do the miners show up tomorrow and continue mining? They believe because the coins they make, they can sell. Is there any guarantee? Is there any law of physics like gravity to make that happen? No. All the exchanges tomorrow could just wake up and say, fuck it, we're going to shut them down. We're going to go fishing. All the infrastructure could be turned off. Technically, there's nothing in the way the world works to keep it on, but it stays on. And because it stays on, the miners know that when they wake up tomorrow, they can sell. So they leave the devices on overnight. And because they left the devices on overnight, the network appears to be successful and secure. So then people believe the price is justified. There's this beautiful reciprocity in all of that. And it just holds itself all together like some magnetic force, magical, invisible hand. It's an extraordinary thing. And it's what truly has made the human race so powerful, is our ability to fantasize and create narratives, abstractions, and then build collectively from those abstractions and to yield collective power through abstractions. The rich are renouncing citizenships and leaving the country with the money. What are your thoughts on this? I will never leave the United States. I'm going to die here. It's my country. Live right here in Colorado. I'm not leaving. I know a lot of rich people who have. They keep trying to get me to move to Puerto Rico because I don't pay taxes. If I do that, I say push off. This is my country, my home. I'll pay taxes. I live here, born in the United States. Everything you are saying, except for our legal and societal, is backed up by the threat of force. Yeah, but even the threat of force, you think about that, you ask yourself, where does that threat of force come from? There's the belief that you can threaten force. So like the general can order his army to do something, but what if the army says no? Then can the general actually enforce the threat of force? We saw this with the Soviet Union, super powerful, right? Big armies and terrifying and gulags. But somewhere along the way, the Communist Party lost the mandate. And so when they tried to go get their secret police and their armies to go and do stuff, they just stopped following orders. They stopped holding up the regime. And then eventually that threat of force went, poof, it just turned into dust, faded away. And that's the reciprocity of these things. And any social structure, you'll get wealth if you do this. Well, the wealth doesn't really exist. The threat of force, it may exist, but only exists if other people consent to do that force. And maybe they will, maybe they won't. Great movie, Sicario 2. When at the very end of the movie, the guy who's in the CIA, he flies down in a helicopter and kills all the Mexican gangsters. And he was ordered by his bosses to kill the girl, who was kind of the MacGuffin for the whole plot. And instead, he decides to just save her life. He disobeyed a direct order, gets back on the helicopter, flies away. You can do that. It's always an option. You can be ordered to do something, just not do it. So threats of force are only as good as the people that order them and the people who follow through. The more inoculated people become, the more libertarian people become, the more critical people think, the less force becomes an option, which is why governments, to maintain power and control, try to make their population as dumb as possible and divided as possible and radical as possible and fanatical as possible, because they're much more inclined than to think simplistically and just follow orders if given. A well-informed population is the most damaging and damning thing to dictatorship and totalitarianism. When people think critically and have the freedom to have a voice, they will never succumb to the greater evils of society. They always overcome that. That's why all dictators burn the books, control the media, and control the education systems. Why was the Deadless Nut wallet not working properly? Works just fine. Yeah, this Jonas Rocker guy, he's got a corn cob up his ass. All right, no more questions from you, son. I gave you a chance. You're just a troll. You're not quite at the molten tar monster level, so we can't really give you that. But maybe a homunculus of the molten tar monster. We'll call you Humunky 1. For enough money, someone will. But what if the money doesn't exist? What if you don't believe in the money? Think about that. How much Venezuelan money will you take? How many bolivars? 40 years ago, you'd probably do a lot for that. Today, it's not even worth the paper it's printed on. Charles, any plans for Cardano pool software with GUI? Yeah, we're looking into that, and there's going to be really tough competition. The stake pool operators themselves have actually built their own GUI, and they're doing some cool stuff with beautiful dashboards. That's true, Michael. 7 years ago, the Bolivar was worth something, and then they elected a crazy socialist. Maybe we should elect people like that. Does Cardano need oracles? Yes. We'll get there. Do I like socialism? No. I think it's one of the greatest evils mankind has invented. There's just degrees of it. Same for communism. You don't have the rights to the fruits of other men's labors. No matter how tempting they are, it always leads to the path to hell. Still got those flashy shoes. Saw it on Twitter. I do. Actually, really cool shoes. Let me see. I got them right here. Let me turn them on. And they come different colors. That's red, kind of a greenish color. That's blue. This one's yellow. That's another kind of blue. Purple. That's a slight sea foam. And this is kind of like rave flash. And this is alternate, which is my favorite because you get a little bit of everything. Those blinky shoes disqualify you from Chadhood. The very fact that I can wear those blinky shoes and pull it off makes me the most Chad of all. I don't even know what the fuck a Chad is. I see those Chad virgin things, like those cross comparisons. I'm not really sure. Where did it even come from? What's the etymology of Chatham? You guys know? Thoughts on Ben Shapiro? New media. He'll eventually kill Fox News and those like him. I hate to be morbid, but if you get hit by a bus, is there someone that could replace you? Yes. I have a yellow folder. I call it the succession plan, and it's ready to go in the event that I die. Good people, top men and women. Headlines tomorrow. Flashy shoe is a fraud, not real lights. Yes, it was all very expensive CGI. Instead of buying an $11 shoe made in China, I spent $20,000 having special CGI made to superimpose light shows on a shoe to randomly impress you. Obviously, that is the more expensive of the two sides of things. When were you introduced to cryptography? I took an introduction to modern crypto course from a mathematician named Soo-Yun Yi, Dr. E at CU Boulder. And I learned an enormous amount from that. I loved it so much, I kept studying the topic. And unfortunately, the textbook was terrible. We had a book from Silverman, who was Soo-Yun Yi's advisor when he went to Brown. And so he was very loyal. Korean academics are like that. They always follow their advisor to the edges of the cliff. So he used a substandard textbook, unfortunately. About the only thing that was useful in that book was the explanation of RSA and how it worked under the hood. But I mean, Silverman is a famous number theorist, so it's no coincidence that he got very excited explaining RSA. But there's a much, much, much better textbook from John Katz called Introduction to Modern Crypto, and that's kind of the canonical book to read if you're interested in cryptography. Long time ago. How can you hate socialism while at the same time have a primary objective of pulling the least of us out of poverty? By creating economic systems for people to pull themselves out of poverty. It wasn't the invention of socialism that solved the problems of extreme hunger and feeding billions of people and building the world modern economy. It was the advent of capitalism and all the wealth that was constructed from capitalism and all the systems that were built from capitalism. And in the wake of that, it was the single greatest invention of humanity. And it was the invention of communism that devastated a third of the entire world. There is no greater example of that than looking at North Korea versus South Korea. Look at a satellite image during the nighttime of the amount of light in North Korea versus South Korea. Two systems, same population, same people. It's the greatest control you could ever have between communism and capitalism and what goes on there. I'm sorry, building a system where you steal from Peter to pay Paul and you take the fruits of someone else's labors, or you have the state take over the factors of production for the greater good, it never works out well because the people who are in charge of that inevitably use this to enrich themselves, not the greater good of society. And they basically try to make everybody equal in poverty, except for the masters who lord over poverty. It's always going to be my opinion. Reasonable people can disagree, and that's fair. And there's strong arguments to make, and academics certainly love making them, especially political theorists, telling us how we who love capitalism are always so wrong, but it's always the socialist who spends the capitalist money. Are you worried about the election not being free and fair? No one has any interest in a proper election. It's easy to solve, doesn't cost a lot of money, and no one wants to solve the problem because they like the division and discord. It has nothing to do with a fair election. That time has passed, or choice for that matter. All you Democrats like Joe Biden, that the real choice there, that was the one you were hoping for. And we were going to get Jeb Bush on the other side. There was an escape hatch. That was Trump. And that's not any better, but it was something different. And then that had to be managed. And that's why Reince Priebus and Mike Pence happened to have been there. I just love that. We're going to change. The last 12 years, 8 of those last 12 years, I was the vice president. And for 50 years, I've been in politics. But I'm the change candidate. I will fight the status quo, which I helped construct and benefited from for 50 years. Here, have Kamala Harris. Now you're happy. Yay. It's a theater. It's all a joke. It's a sick joke. And the punchline is that we now have to wear muzzles everywhere. Yeah, guys, it has to change. And the only way you change it is through economics. You can't change it at the ballot box. Mm-hmm. Yes, Sonny, I do exercise my Second Amendment rights while I still have them. Are we live? Yes, we are live from warm, sunny Colorado, and almost about done. Come on, give me something. Are you into physics? No, mathematicians never are. We hate physics. We're like, ugh, too applied. Do you have a coach? No, I don't play any sports. Why would I have a coach? Are you a Glock guy? I do have a Glock, but I am an FN man. Leave politics out of business, bro. Our business is the business of politics. We're building election systems and property systems and things that inevitably topple governments. You think this isn't political? It's the most political thing you can do in the world. When you get close to the money, politics gets deeply involved. You don't believe me? Look at Libra. Mark Zuckerberg poked the bear just a little bit. Not a lot, just a little bit. And it was the equivalent of coating himself in honey, stripping naked, going into the bear's den, grabbing the cub and running with the cub as the mama bear chases him. And I remember at the time I said, run, honey man, run. Because that's they're coming for you. You went for the US dollar, now they're coming for you. Everything we do is political. You build a system for change, you're going to piss people off. You're going to get slandered, attacked, potentially imprisoned, maybe killed. That's what happens when the stakes are really high. Look what they did to Gaddafi the minute he thought about building a gold-backed currency in Libya. Everybody was cool with that dude when he was in secret prisons and state police and genocide and all kinds of horrible things, being just a whack job for 40 years. The minute he started fucking with the world financial order, he's an evil dictator that needs to be removed. Okay? When you change things, you take a risk. And yes, it's political. It's how it is. It's always been that way. The point of a revolution is that it's sufficiently large. It's like a cloud of locusts or a cicada. No matter how bad people want to take you down, they can't kill all the locusts. It just strips the land and it moves on. And that's what we're doing. Cardano is being built in a way to grow to a point where it becomes unstoppable because it's composed of millions of faceless people and it's resilient and it can't be censored or taken down. And it carries with it an economic philosophy, a political philosophy, power being pushed to the edges, a way of inoculating itself from middlemen and cults of personality, belief in first principles like the scientific method, proof and evidence, ability to protect itself from propaganda and change that's counterproductive, built-in governance system with Voltaire, where every person expects to have a voice. And the minute they see anything that's unfair, Spakra appears. The minute they see anything that's unfair, they talk about it immediately without fear of recourse or reprisal. That's the culture we've constructed. And that culture will reinforce and get stronger and stronger and stronger and become so big and so vast, it's impossible as a unit to break. It doesn't matter what happens to me, what happens to any of the founders of these things. We're irrelevant to the swarm, and it will eventually transform and overcome society. I'm so tired of the way things are. I really am. I'm tired of my monuments being burned to the ground by stupid children who have no clue what they're doing, that are being puppeteered and controlled by masters behind them for political purposes. I'm tired of a master class of people being able to run the world economy and tell us what to think and what to do, and a small group of people controlling the media and every element, and making arbitrary decisions of who gets to win and who gets to lose, who gets to run for office, who gets to win in office, what choices I have. I didn't sign up for any of this. None of the American people did. I'm tired of it. They're tired of it. And we keep saying change, change, change. And I went to the ballot box with Ron Paul. People on the other political side of the spectrum went to the ballot box with Bernie Sanders. And 16 collective years of effort. And where did that get us? Where did it get us? Mitt Romney, John McCain, on their side, Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden. What will change? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. The only way to win is economics. So yeah, it's political. It's always been political. The name of the game isn't to make money. That's just, as I said, a fiction to control people, to convince people to get along, to keep power structures in place for the greater good of a small group. The way to change things is to become a swarm of locusts that you cannot eradicate and sweep through the land, changing everything as you go. Change the landscape as you go permanently. That's what we're doing. That's what cryptocurrencies have always been about. They're a revolution, a peaceful revolution of hearts and minds and society to make everything better. A new way of doing things. It carries with it new sets of problems, but it also carries with it a set of solutions to older problems that we are not getting solved. If that's not what you signed up for, then you really have to reevaluate why you're in crypto. Go buy Tesla stock. Go buy something else. There's plenty of high risk, high return assets out there and volatile things out there. This industry is not about making you rich. This industry is about transcending the money you have to replace it with new money. This industry is not about making a Fortune 500 business 12% more efficient. This industry is about getting rid of the Fortune 500 company and replacing it with structures that are bottom up, as opposed to top-down, hierarchical, and controlled by a small group of people who dominate and stick around forever. This industry is about transforming the way that people vote, work together, and collaborate. If these things aren't interested to you and you love the system as it is, and you think that system's great, or you happen to be paid by the old system, then be advised that you happen to be inside the system that's going to get rid of the system you like. Okay, so abort and go somewhere else. Politics is in everything we do. It's in the DNA of everything we do. And the first lesson you learn is that politics today is theater. It's fiction to control people. Learn that first. And then the second lesson you learn is that the only way to affect real change is through economics. That's what brought the Soviet Union down. Not 60 years of shadow wars and spycraft and the threat of nuclear war and satellite conflicts in Vietnam and Afghanistan and all these things. It was economics. And you can never avoid that one universal truth. So this is at the root of all change. And it'll get us everything we fail to get in the ballot box. What do you think of Unity 2020? Is the Unity ticket where they had Admiral McRaven with Yang, I think? That was the proposal from Weinstein. Idealism. Again, you don't elect your way out of it. It's a rigged system. Best books for leadership. Start with Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life. It's a good starting point. Work on yourself before you can work on other people. Make your own house good. Be a good person. Thoughts on four-dimensional space. There's a great book. It was written in the 19th century by a mathematician called Flatland. Read about it. And it gives you a great perspective. It's as if a creature exists in a two-dimensional space. And it explains the rules of the system and how a two-dimensional creature lives. And the simplest creatures are lines. And then after that, they have triangles and rectangles, and eventually you get to polygons, and the kings of that world, the high priests of Flatland, are circles. So this is an amazing book, because you then start thinking, what does a two-dimensional world actually look like? And how does that work? And then when you go to the 3D world, the character in Flatland's a square and is elevated out of the two-dimensional world by a sphere. And by the way, a sphere appears as a circle in a two-dimensional world, right? Just a cross-section of it. Now, going up and down the plane, the circle changes its radius, but it's a circle when you cut a cross-section. So then you're in a three-dimensional world, and you're in the square is like, oh my God, this is so crazy. And of course, nobody believes the square inside Flatland. And what this is nice is that it's an analogy to the fourth dimension. So we're three-dimensional, and you go to the fourth dimension, we'd actually be hollow. We'd have an open dimension. So we appear closed, just like to a two-dimensional object, a house would appear closed. But if you're 3D, you can look into it from the top, right? Well, similarly, we would appear open to a 4D object. So that's a great book to read because it really provokes the thought of what is the fourth dimension? What would that be all about? Rudy Rucker also wrote a wonderful book on hypergeometry, and I highly recommend it. Okay. Time Zero is great as well. Yeah, there you go. Go to contract, and the IOHK website gives a Hong Kong address. Yeah, because that's the address for our Hong Kong subsidiary. When we rebuild the IOHK website, we'll include the Wyoming address because we're now IO Global. We just did the rebrand. Could NepoPOS be created for Cardano? Proofs of stake sidechains does exist for Cardano. Google proof of stake sidechains, Peter Gaji and Agalos Gasis, and explains how to use that scheme. It's different from NepoPOS. Aldous Huxley's The Doors of Perception. Is that LSD book that was mentioned by Michael Pollan in How to Change Your Mind? Good try there. Do you like Tarantino or Coen Brothers movies? I like them both. They're both awesome. Coen Brothers more so. What's up with your game? Still working on it, guys. Cardano is my highest priority. My video game that I'm building is just like, way down here. It's a passion project. You work on passion projects when you're not working on your primary project, usually on the weekends. I haven't had a weekend in a long time. I've worked 11 days straight, so long. Been very long. Are you a friend of Goretzel? Yes. He's going to do something with us at some point, but we're just figuring it out. He's a good guy. I like Ben a lot. He's an extremely fun guy to talk to. Have you ever been to Albania? I've looked at it from Corfu. Favorite Ernest Hemingway book? Was it For the Whom the Bells Toll? I think that was a Hemingway book. Thoughts about doing something with Alex, with Celsius? Oh, we'll do something with Alex. That's a Metallica song. The Metallica song was based on that book. Rah. What's the Kanye West coin? I heard about it for a while ago. You guys are giving me cancer now. Come on. Oh, come on. Come on. Give me something good to end this on. Got 1 minute left. Clip it at 2 hours. Perception of Reality, Michael Pollan's book, How to Change Your Mind, really opened up things a lot for me. I didn't really think much about psychedelics until I'd read his book, and it's just fascinating about how to think differently and engage your brain differently. And it gave me a love of isolation tanks. And I'm actually buying finally my own flotation chamber because they shut down the center that I use. And I've developed a great love of that. So that really did change my perception on a lot of things. You sold all your ADA for BTC. Well, good for you. Enjoy it. Is Dan Larimer lying about Cardano? I think Dan Larimer believes the statements he's saying. Whether they're true statements or not doesn't really matter to him. He believes them. And if he believes it, it's true to him. And why do you care about what he thinks? Why? What's the point? Bear shit in the woods. What's that matter to you? It's like, leave the bear alone. Just do your thing. He'll do your thing. We all get along. It's big woods. What's up with the $1 million bounty and the shielded QR code? When we get that feature done, we'll announce something about that. I want to do it. It's going to be a lot of fun. I built that gaming PC. It's done deal. It's already completely constructed and it's running just fine, sir. Heidegger, Nietzsche, Hume, or Hegel? Probably Nietzsche, if I had to choose on that list. All right, kids. Nothing good here. We're going to clip it there. Thank you so much. This was fun as always. I love Friday night. The mood is right. Oh, what a night. And I hope you guys have a great weekend. It was a good week for me. I'm going to go get some sleep. Good night.